I just want to say this before we get into the whole H1B1 conversation that I'm about to have with you. I am pro-immigration. I think it is a great thing. I think that refugees should have the easiest passageway into coming into the country, and they not only are a beneficial workforce, they pay into taxes, which can go into further developing the land, right? As well as we have a shortage of people having children and everything like that. I don't think it is a problem to have more people of color or different colors, even of myself, in the nation. Now, the H-1B1 visa is very beneficial to this specific individual who gets it because it gives them an opportunity to use their intelligence, their better grades and whatever in their schools to be noticed and then be able to have easier access to coming to the United States. And they do that under a work visa that is provided through that H-1B1 system, right? And this works both ways, whereas it's beneficial to our country because it is a taking of a beneficial person from another nation. It serves us as a competitor in the world field to take the better or the above average students or whatever to our nation, because that nation will now be lacking of it. And then it's doubly beneficial because our companies and organizations can now utilize them. It's beneficial to the companies who take them because now you have a candid audience. This is a worker who's here with your sponsorship, who needs you to continue their employment so that they can stay in the country, which is an extra reason to stay with that particular company or organization. Because not only do you have to find another company if you want to work somewhere else, but you have to be sure that that company will sponsor your further residence here. That added desperation makes it so that these companies can be a little bit different when it comes to how they treat these particular people coming in. They often are forced to work longer hours or, forced to get things done to a higher capacity than other workers who might be domestic, right? For the workers, the American workers who work alongside these folks, this is obviously a opportunity that they will not have. This is an opportunity that will go to somebody else who might be more qualified or just might be in a situation where, again, they're a candid audience and for whatever reason, it is more beneficial for that company to take them over you. It is providing more competition for those particular fields. And then obviously there's also how much you might pay these particular guys, but in areas like Silicon Valley where there's so much competition, both when it comes to employment and these employers, right? They oftentimes get paid very well. But that's not always the case. You go to other places and they might not be paid as well as their American counterpart. Now, for a guy like Elon Musk, these types of things are good for him, right? It puts him in a position where he can eliminate foreign competition by taking those people into his own organization, and then on top of that, he can treat them a little bit differently, and so on and so on. It gives him a couple of benefits. Now, where MAGA is saying is basically, you're taking these opportunities away from Americans and you're bringing in immigrants to do these particular jobs, and we are actually for less immigrants all around. How are you, supporting our benefit? How are you supporting our particular policies? And it's interesting that Elon Musk is just calling these people stupid. He's just insulting them and everything like that, considering how important their support was during the campaign and how interesting it is that these are the primary supporters of Donald Trump. And to see this rift is, like I mentioned, fascinating. Now, me, almost all the time, I say that the thing that lacks, or the reason something isn't done well, is because of a lack of regulation. I think that the way that we currently regulate employment in general is very poor, piss poor. And because of it, both the people who immigrate here and American residents do not get treated fairly, not in the marketplace, right? And on top of that, we have a situation that is pretty rampant where a lot of these organizations, these companies, they communicate with each other, which means that your pay is being decided as a collective. So you might go to another business trying to better your own situation, and they're going to do the same thing to you because they're all in agreement, all in alignment with it. Just like you have the illusion of choice when you go to the grocery store, you're like, oh, I might buy this thing or this thing, but all those brands are owned by the same shareholders or company. It's the same thing with the companies having these communications with each other about how much they're going to pay you, how they're going to treat you, how they're going to deal with your hours and everything like that is extremely problematic because it creates false competition. And like with anything else, the employers being the few and the employees being the many, systems and regulations should be catering to the many. That is the way that you benefit the most people. A rising tide raises all ships. The H-1B1 as it is stands to almost exclusively assist the employer. Yes, the employee might get a lot of money because they're in a higher skill level job or skill level field, but they're not going to be treated fairly when it comes to the marketplace of overall employment. And the way that it's been developed and doled out and the way that these companies can kind of use it rampantly is also problematic because it then leaves a lot of the American citizenry behind. But I'm not saying to get rid of it. I would never say we need less people coming in. What I will point out is the reason that a lot of Americans don't have that level of skill, who are not at that particular metric, is because of things like the defunding of schools, the lacking of education, the lacking of incentives for people to get educated. A lot of Americans feel like they go to school for all these many years and then they don't get the job that they're looking for. They don't get the opportunities that they're looking for, or they're working a particular job that doesn't stimulate them or make them feel like they're mentally expanding in any way. And a lot of people feel like they're in a dead-end situation. You add to that the problems with commuting because of the lack of transportation funding. We do not have a proper train system. We don't have proper subways in all states except one. You also have further expenses for pretty much everything, whether that be food or where you're living. People don't have the opportunity to create new ideas and really do anything with them, right? If you have some brilliant idea to make some great invention, it's going to cost you a lot of money here in the United States. It's going to cost you a lot of money to take any business off of the ground. It is completely expensive, and you've been mostly priced out of all the elements that you need by larger organizations and companies. So if you want to do something new, it's a lot more difficult here than it might be in another nation. There are young people who have the time on their hands, a lot of times to their own detriment, but they have time on their hands to invent things, to start businesses, start companies, do all types of crazy things, and they don't have to spend the same amount in expenses, or they get support from their local area or their government to do a whole bunch of new things. And then they get noticed, and a lot of times they get brought over here or to some Western power. But that's not because Americans are inherently unintellectual or uninspired. It's more so that Americans have nothing to inspire them and don't have the time to really feed their intellectual interest. Which makes Elon Musk's statements even more concerning, because it's like, dude, you're one of the big employers in this particular country, and you're saying that you don't think that Americans are as valuable as foreigners. But more importantly, you and Trump are working to make it more difficult for us to continue to compete with foreigners. When you defund education, you defund the social programs that are the safety net for Americans, you make it more difficult for Americans to compete. But just like most of these sociopathic billionaires, they're like, at this point, yeah, it's definitely a mental illness. And I really meant it, because this guy's got to be crazy saying a statement like this. On one hand, you are commenting on how we don't compete, but you're directly making it so that we can't compete. You are, by all means, against the will of the people as well as the people themselves. All I can hope for is that the MAGA supporters start to realize, one, that Trump isn't their guy, has never been their guy, and neither are guys like Vivek or Elon. But more importantly, the liberal social safety nets that people are often trying to create, like UBIs, Universal Basic Income, are so that we can directly counteract these types of moves. When you have a universal basic income to help, fill the gaps for people, you give Americans the time on their hands to do things like create new ideas, to get further educated, to become high-skilled level people, or to, create new companies altogether. And that might sound like that's beneficial to everyone, but it's not that beneficial to billionaires and a lot of these company owners, because the thing they fear most is actual competition. That's also why they're totally against a public option for a lot of the things that they provide. I think any utility that you need to live should be public. let's see what happens. I think this is a point in time where we might actually see people on the right and the left come together and understand that class consciousness wins all. And if you've been watching my videos, I've been talking about that forever, so I don't even know.